Shortly after namaz, this bomb exploded, and people panicked initially, and a large number of them left as hurriedly as they could. Some of them remained behind, and the images that they saw there so shocking that they were stunned. The crowd regulated itself. There was no trouble, and a large number of them dispersed over a period of time. And according to the police version, about 500 people remained inside.
So Makkah Masjid holds a Jummah day, maybe thousands of
There
people.
would have been about 5,000 to 8,000 people there, I suppose.
Yeah.
The police estimate is that there were about 5,000 people there, 4,500 left peacefully, and about 500 remained inside. And according to the police version, some militants went and joined them. So when I asked the police how they concluded that these people were militants and whether they were carrying weapons or something, the answer was, no, we concluded that they were militants because they were shouting slogans. And the slogans were Allahu Akbar, which was, according to me, quite shocking, because when you see a scene where battered bodies are lying around, mangled bodies, you naturally do think of God, and Allahu Akbar is one of the first things that will come to mind to any devout Muslim. From the fact that people call out Allahu Akbar, if the police determines that they are militants, then there is something sadly lacking in the education of the police with regard to these aspects of life which are actually constitutionally guaranteed rights. The police version also is that the crowd that was going out with the intention of damaging Hindu localities and so on. And there is absolutely no basis for the police to have said such a thing, because none of the policemen say that they heard anything which could lead them to that conclusion. It is a conclusion which they came to based on inherent bias in their thinking. Now, for example, if you look at the fact that a person calls out Allahu Akbar leads you to conclude that he is a militant, that shows how how much misconstruction there is, and how derailed the thinking of police. Anyway, then the police version is that this crowd tried to attack and kill policemen on duty at the nearby petrol pump and set the pump on fire, and that therefore they fired in self-defense, which again has proved to be a false story, because the evidence that has come out shows that the crowd did throw stones, but had absolutely nothing with which to burn or kill anybody. Did not even shout the slogans which the police claimed that it shouted. And that the firing was done in such a way that bullets went through people from the back. And forensic reports of postmortems confirm that, corroborate that. And we find that not only was there no attempt to burn the pump, there was in fact a fabrication of that evidence during the period when the pump was in the custody of the police as a scene of offence after the crowd had been dispersed. Subsequent to this blast, we found there was the Lumbini Park blast and the Gokul Chat blast, as a result of which a large number of Muslim youths were, I will not say detained, I will not say arrested. The fact of the matter is that they were kidnapped.
Right.
By people in plain clothes, who subsequently it turned out happened to be connected with the police department or policemen in Mufti. They were taken to locations which were not police stations and not regular places of detention. They were tortured, and I don't want to relate here again the means of that torture. It's quite horrifying. And then when these boys were eventually produced before the court, notwithstanding a judgment of the Supreme Court which says that when an accused is produced before a magistrate, the magistrate has a duty to inquire whether he has been ill-treated in police custody. And if he says that he has, then he must not be sent back to police custody. These boys were never asked this question, they were not physically examined, they were sent to jail, and when they reached the jail, there the jail authorities recorded that their bodies bore such and such an injury. And this demonstrates that not only were these boys picked up because they were Muslims, but the judicial system also failed these boys. And curiously, in the Chellapalli prison, they were kept in a cell which was marked ISI. which means that all these Muslim boys are thought to be Pakistani agents or terrorists or God knows what. And when the Minorities Commission, AP State Minorities Commission, issued a warrant to an advocate, Mr. L. Ravichandar, to take a forensic doctor with him and go verify from the prison whether this had actually happened, because the commissioner had received complaints. And as counsel for the commission, I had advised it that it was within its power to do this. The advocate commissioner Ravichandar took along with him a forensic specialist, Dr. Mahendra Reddy, and they went there and documented that the boys had been tortured in very horrendous ways. And Ravichandar filed a report eventually in which he compared what had happened with the kind of things that happened during the Holocaust. And he was quite negative about the role that the state has played. He indicted the state in a very bad manner. Very bad in the sense, shows the state in a very bad light. And then said that there has to be something done to restore confidence in the minority community. It is not being targeted. Nothing of that kind was done. Not only that, subsequently we filed a suit in which we claimed 20 lakh rupees compensation for each boy who was tortured, and compensation for the families of the boys also, because the family life has also been destroyed. And there we had great difficulty getting the suit registered, and about half an hour.
It's a civil suit.
It's a civil suit.
Who is it? Who are you targeting?
I'm not targeting anybody. I'm only wanting justice for civil society. And
who's the party?
I want to establish two principles. One, that no institution of governance can act in a communal or biased manner, and that there has to be public accountability of all state institutions. One. Second, whenever an institution malfunctions, then the compensation for that malfunctioning cannot come out of the taxpayers' money. It must come out of the personal assets of the officers who are guilty of being delinquent, guilty of committing those aberrations which have caused this problem to come. So we have asked that not only the state give compensation to these boys in the sums that we have claimed, we have asked that the compensation be recovered from the personal assets of the officers concerned.
Is there any precedent for this, or you're trying to establish?
We will establish that precedent, inshallah. We are on the right track. I know the law is on our side, the facts are on our side. And notwithstanding some minor hiccups that are there in any system of governance anywhere, the judiciary in India is an institution that has proved itself time and again to be one which successfully negotiates the rapids of such situations, and we have seen what happened in Gujarat, and inshallah something similar, something better will happen in Hyderabad as well.
So all the boys that have been picked up from Makkah Masjid or Lumbini Park things,
all these boys have been released.
Yeah.
Some of these boys were released after the National Minorities Commission had to intervene, and when the National Minorities Commission visited them in Chellapalli jail, it was the body which found out, which appreciated that they were lodged in a cell which was marked for ISI people. And another thing that bears mention is that although these boys were picked up on charges of terrorism and there was a large amount of publicity, hostile adverse publicity about the Muslim community and its involvement, the involvement of its youth in terrorist activities, the Commissioner of Police has himself written a letter in answer to a query from the AP State Minorities Commission that after investigation it was found that none of these boys was involved in terrorist activities. Naturally this has not been publicized, but we have made it a ground of our claim, and it is also very material that the only thing that the police seem to have against these boys is that they allegedly had jihadi literature in their possession. Jihad, as you know, is a Quranic concept, and it's not exclusive to the Quran. Jihad basically means striving for righteousness and doing what is right and preventing what is wrong. And the theory behind jihad, or the philosophy behind jihad, is that if you strive towards a righteous way of life and towards righteousness, then if you succeed, then you have created a better world for yourself. And if you do not, if you die in the attempt, then you have died in a very noble effort, and that the gates of heaven are then open for you. During my argument before the Bhaskar Rao Commission of Inquiry, I read out from a book this concept of jihad and asked His Lordship a rhetorical question: do you recognize this as jihad? He says yes. So the first conclusion that we come to is that if these boys are in possession of jihadi literature and that merits their being locked up, then the Quran being there in every Muslim's heart and home, all Muslims should be locked up. And the book that I was reading from actually was the Bhagavad Gita, and the same thought is reflected in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Guru Granth Sahib, and religious texts of the Christians as well. So it's actually quite a stupid thing. And one serious issue that arises in this entire episode is that you find this new breed of legislation, the Prevention of Terrorism Act and Control of Organized Crime Act and stuff like that. What these legislations seek to do is to place the burden of proving your innocence on the accused. And this is normally not possible. You can't prove the negative of a thing. If you call me a thief and say, prove that you're not a thief, it's not possible for me. The reason why this has been done is this bogey of terrorism has been hyped up so much. And the police is an absolutely ineffective body, except in the rare cases when it does a good job of investigation. And we find that it is in order to cover up their own inadequacies that the police establishment has been prevailing upon the Home Ministry to come out with this kind of legislation, which makes it an easy job for them. They don't have to investigate, they don't have to do anything, they just pick you up on suspicion, lock you up, and the mechanism is to book cases against you in 10 different police stations. So that by the time you get out of one, you're stuck in another, and there are so many hearings and travel to so many courts and so on, that for the next 10 years your life is entirely screwed up. And that destroys you, both in material terms, in financial terms, in terms of spirit, and quite possible it makes you very bitter vis-a-vis the state. So without realizing it, or even perhaps deliberately because of realizing it, these people are adopting a policy which actually is an inducement to people to look at ways and means in which they can resist this kind of oppression.
So but police by their action is not serving the cause of India. They are actually
they are doing a distinct disservice to the country.
Yeah.
And if this is just the kind of divisive ideology, this is just the kind of divisive behavior which causes nations to disintegrate.
Right. So two things about police behavior in Hyderabad. One is how they reacted or they acted on Muslims in the aftermath of the blast. All those activities can be considered illegal activities. Not only firing at shoulder, head stuff, but picking people, as you said, kidnapping them and then torturing them and all that stuff.
Yes.
And all these kids have been subsequently released by the court. Now, what happened to those police officers? Those who did these.
One of them I know has retired. One of them I know has been promoted. And this again sends a completely wrong signal to police officers. It gives them a feeling of total immunity from due process of law. It gives them a feeling that they are above the law. It demoralizes those people, those members of civil society who respond to such situations and try and get some semblance of order back into the national life. And it plays havoc with justice as a whole.
So there's some disconnect in the system that even though judicial system is saying that what they did was wrong, but there's no mechanism to go and...
No, there is a mechanism. Okay. Only thing is the authorities desist from recognizing, from acknowledging what has happened, and as a result they seem to think that if you ignore something long enough it will go away and people have a short memory and they will forget it. But if you look at the argument that the learned counsel for the police made before the Bhaskar Rao Commission, he talks about the invasions of India that Mughal emperors are supposed to have carried out almost 1,000 years ago. And he refers to these Muslims who died, and instead of justifying the firing, the honorable gentleman actually has the audacity to argue, who are these people? they came from some foreign country, they ruled us, they imposed Urdu on us. Why should there be 4 marriages in Islam? Why should there be Hajj subsidy for Muslims? And so on and so forth, which is absolute drivel. So the fact that the government did nothing, the police department did nothing to change that council, the government did nothing when the evidence before the Bhaskarrao Commission of Inquiry is a clear admission that the police fabricated records, fabricated evidence, fired at fleeing people into their backs, did not coordinate as between their various units, reacted with much more force than was necessary, were guilty of dereliction of duty, guilty even of fabricating the FIRs that were filed. All this is admitted evidence. In the face of that evidence, if the government does nothing, if the Bhaskarrao Commission of Inquiry, a year and a half after final arguments have been over, chooses to do nothing, the only thing that we can think of as a likely reason is that these institutions have determined to align themselves with the perpetrators of what has happened, rather than take steps to discharge their constitutional functions and do their duty. I would like to briefly mention a small case as an anecdote which took place in England a long time ago. A man who was parking his car happened to accidentally mount the rear wheel on a policeman's foot. And because the policeman had ordered him to park closer to the car, he was very angry. He left the car there and walked away. After some time, when he finished his work, he came and sat down in the car and drove off, and this man was charged with aggravated assault. His defense was that what I committed was not a crime, because when it happened, I did not know it had happened. There was no guilty intention in my mind, and unless there is a guilty intention, there cannot be a crime. The court overruled that and said, yes, when you started off, it was not a crime, but your action of leaving it there after you were aware of what had happened superimposes the subsequent guilty intention on a pre-existing act. And similarly, I would like to suggest that these institutions of governance, the Bhaskarrao Commission of Inquiry, the courts, the police administration, in not responding to what is categorical and irrefutable documented evidence in these cases, is doing a great disservice to the nation and indulging in ostrich-like behavior, which is detrimental to the interests of the country as a whole and does not serve any positive cause at all.
So from Hyderabad, I mean, Hyderabad was an extreme case when Muslims were harassed, but this happened, we saw that happening, Muslims getting picked up illegally.
I would respectfully disagree with you there. There have been instances in Gujarat, for example.
Right.
There have been instances in Maharashtra, for example, and in other places like Kandaman, etc., where people of one ethnicity have been badly harassed, treated, tortured, killed, murdered, raped, looted by gangs of people who claim to be Hindus, and at the same time assisted by or in collaboration with the police establishments of those places.
Right.
So Hyderabad, yes, is an extreme example, but it is not the extreme example.
Right. I was going. What I was going for is to show that this police role in picking up youth and targeting Muslim kids and illegally torturing them and illegal detention, which you call kidnapping. It happened in Maharashtra, happening in Azamgarh, MP, Gujarat. We have seen it everywhere. Now, what can Muslims of those areas do to prevent, minimize, or take?
I think prevention is basically not in our hands, because it is for the police to go, and they have powers of arrest, powers of search and seizure, and so on and so forth. The best thing that the Muslims can do is to pick each instance, highlight it, and fight back against it in whatever way they can. I have been telling people since 2002 that we have a great need of lawyers in the community. People scoffed at what I said in those days, but now I think they're beginning to realize the validity of what I said. You need good lawyers who can work reasonably well at a grassroots level. Every case does not become a Bilqis Bano case or a Zahira Sheikh case where big lawyers can be hired and 15, 20, 30 lakh rupees can be spent on a case. Most cases begin and die at a very small level, and if at those levels they can be handled properly with some semblance of due observance of procedure and substantive law, then I think a great deal of advantage will be seen. And when more and more people fight cases which result in their acquittal and in the indictment of the police department and these agencies, and show that the community has been wrongly targeted and harassed, things will change. You find, for example, that after 9/11 in the United States, there was this huge outcry against Muslims and a huge deal of suspicion against Muslims as a large. But today you find that the atmosphere is slightly different. And there has been a change. And there has been a change because people realize eventually that what they have been thinking of all along is... Here another thing is that we have this legacy of the partition. And Muslims are blamed for partition, which is actual rubbish, because the Muslims who decided to opt for Pakistan are in Pakistan. And this, we are not Pakistanis living here. We are Indians living in India. Even though some of us have relatives and cousins and God knows what living in Pakistan, although we have cultural ties with people in Pakistan, cultural ties, family ties, linguistic ties with people of another country don't necessarily make you have, extraterritorial loyalties. But this kind of rubbish...
relatives in America.
Yes, this kind of rubbish that, that these institutions... This is a us and them attitude which has percolated. I think it is primarily responsible from the time of Sardar Patel, Lal Bahadur Shastri and company slowly weeding out Muslims from the civil services and so on, and eventually leading to a position where you don't see very many Muslims in these positions, except as figureheads here and there occasionally, for the state to be able to argue that it is a secular state, etc. I would like to know how, if it is a secular state, it does not find it surprising that institutions of justice, for example, in the high courts, in the state commissions for consumer affairs and so on and so forth, you find pictures of Hindu deities on doors and so on and so forth. Why should they be there?
So you said, cases of police injustice, Muslims can fight it.
It gives people the impression that it is a Hindu institution,
right,
which is a completely wrong thing. It's a secular state. Sorry.
Yeah. So you said the instance of police injustice, Muslims should fight it legally. But we see, like in UP and Maharashtra, lawyers who are defending those so-called terrorists are being harassed, beaten up, and even killed.
Shahid Azmi was killed.
Shahid Azmi was killed.
Quite so.
So now in that situation, what are your thoughts on this?
I think people who are within the legal fraternity, lawyers, they must realize that there is an Advocates Act which governs them, and which says that if a person is willing to pay the fee that your stature at the bar commands, then you have no right to refuse a brief. The whole principle of Indian secular, pluralistic, democratic traditions is that a person is deemed innocent until proved guilty, and he must have a right to a fair trial. This is what marks us out from other countries, including some neighboring countries, where injustice is a way of life. We believe, and rightly so, that however horrendous a crime someone might have committed, it has to be established in accordance with a certain established procedure, according to law, that he has committed that crime, and thereafter there is an institution which inflicts a penalty on him, which could be death, which could be life, whatever. It is not open for any of us to take that law into our hands. Anybody who tries to prevent a lawyer from appearing for a person or arguing a cause or doing his duty is actually guilty of obstructing justice.
And most of these instances are bar councils.
I would very much like to know how come when these massive aberrations of administrative behavior took place, judges sat silent and did nothing, although they had suo motu power of making out a case and asking for an account. I would also like to know as to why when lawyers are seen to be obstructing other lawyers from discharging their duty, why the judges don't intervene. You are not an impartial observer. A judge is not supposed to sit there and determine who is the smarter of the two lawyers.
Right.
He is supposed to establish what justice is, what the truth of the matter is, apply the law to it, and come to conclusions, adjudicate the matter. So judges have to be more proactively involved in what is going on, and they cannot make a pretense of having a really fully functional establishment and pretend that there's nothing wrong with it. The faster the judiciary addresses these issues, the better, because it's going to be otherwise a situation where if you don't self-regulate, then some other institution of governance from outside has to decide how to regulate you, which is why all these unfortunate details about alleged judicial involvement in corruption and in land grabbing and so on and so forth is surfacing, and this erodes the public perception of the value of the judiciary as an establishment of dispensing justice.
You are here in the U.S. for a few weeks, so tell us, what is the message that you're bringing to Indians living in the U.S.?
The message that I am bringing is that one need not feel despondent about events in Hyderabad or elsewhere in the country. These events are aberrations, they are not normal, and it will be a passing phase, and it will eventually evaporate. And what will be replaced will be a system which is more transparent, and which will also usher in a new era of greater justice, greater participative governance, inclusive of the Muslims participating in it, and also that the Indians who are living here, regardless of what religious affiliation they have, or if they are atheists and so on, or what ethnicity they come from, there is this bond of Indianness which binds everyone. And the people who are living here are living a life which is away from their homeland, and I understand that they have this great emotional connect with the Indian subcontinent. These people are living lives which take them, from early morning to late at night, work, no time for their families, etc. But fortunately, they are in relative terms better placed than the local people as far as money is concerned. The local people there have a lot of time on their hands, and I think it will be a great help if Indian institutions, if institutions founded here by Indians, like for example the Indian Muslim Council of USA and so on, Indian Muslim Relief Committee, these institutions collaborate with Indians who are working there. I have, for example, in Gujarat, one Mr. Gagan Sethi is doing a wonderful job training lawyers to handle these cases, as I said earlier. In fact, those thoughts come from his document. There are people like Shafeeq Mahajir in Delhi, and Tista Setalwat in Bombay, and Harsh Mandar in UP, and all these people. I think you can collaborate with these people and with local lawyers in every small. For example, you spoke of Azamgarh, why not? UP, other places in UP, in Hyderabad, where there can be a network created, where there can be quick dissemination of information, guidance available for people to handle their local problems, and eventually lead to an era of a greater sense of security and a greater and speedier availability of real justice.
Thank you very much, Shafeeq Mahajir.
It's been a pleasure talking.